Hello all. My name is Bob Niels and welcome to Database Design, Purpose and Requirements. The purpose of this particular video is to start looking at the steps that we have already identified in designing a database. For this particular video, we're going to look at the first two steps. One is to the determining and the development of the purpose of your database, and then finally the gathering of the requirements for your database. All the rest of the steps, I should say, will be coming in subsequent videos as we continue on with the course week by week. The first thing we need to do when designing a database, as we already mentioned, is determine and develop the purpose of the database. Why is this important? Well, it's important to make sure you understand exactly what it is you're going to be accomplishing. For the most part, we also want to put boundaries around it. Sometimes the scope can get very wide, and if we don't sit back and constrain ourselves to making sure this is what we want to focus on, we can go beyond that, and we never know if we're successful or when it ends. I hope that makes sense. But basically what I'm telling you is that a mission statement such as this, and we'll talk about what that is here in a second, puts that focus. It basically puts constraints around what it is we're trying to accomplish. We're not limiting ourselves. We're basically just stating this is what this is for. And so later on, as we continue our design, if we start finding ourselves going outside the boundary of what we stated this database was for, we can stop ourselves and ensure that that is something we really want to do. This is not to say we can't come back and look at our purpose and rewrite something else down, but for the most part, it's to, again, keep our focus on what it is we're trying to accomplish to begin with. So what do we do? Well, I want you to write something down. You're supposed to write something down here. I call it a mission statement for our database. I'm not sure if everybody here knows what a mission statement is, but basically a mission statement is a 1, 2, or 3, or maybe 4 sentence paragraph that defines exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish. Mission statements are related primarily to a business. Every business has a mission statement. I welcome you to go online and find mission statements for Apple, Cincinnati State, P&G, GE, AT&T, whatever. They're out there, and you'll see what it is they are focusing on. Businesses have to do the same thing. They can't do everything. If they try to do everything for everybody, they'll fail because they won't do the one thing they do really well. That makes them who they are. So that's what a mission statement is. Like I said, Cincinnati State has one. I welcome you to go to our website and find it. So, with that said, you're going to constantly use this mission statement. I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but you're going to constantly refer back to this mission statement as you're developing to ensure that you're staying within the boundaries of that statement. That way you won't do more than what is actually being asked. Okay? Couple of examples that I guess kind of drew up for you. The first one being something maybe I would want. I want a database to store all the students I've ever taught, and I could report on courses I taught them, or I could report on the courses that I taught them, I should say. Grades I gave them, and grades based on genders. Another one that maybe somebody might come to you asking for, who might own a storefront, say at a flea market. I want a database to store all customers, their orders, their products, the vendors of their products, all their history and all their demographics. Excuse me. Be able to provide suggestions based on the buying history. That's quite a bit there. All of a sudden, that scope gets pretty broad in what you really need to nail down. And I hope you understand that this little statement doesn't give you the requirements of what's being asked, but it gives you the boundaries of what's being asked. Then you can take this statement and start delving into the actual details of the requirements of what is being asked. I hope that makes sense. So with that said, now that you have it, you need to start diving into the requirements. What are requirements? So, okay, requirements are the details. They are the things that really collecting requirements and getting the details of requirements is really what separates us being successful to us being not so successful. We need to understand exactly what is being asked of us. Again, we're going to be creating databases and applications, since we're all software developers, for business purposes. It is what it is your job to make sure you know exactly what is needed. Once again, this is a course for software development for the most part. Most people taking this course are going to become software developers. With that said, you're going to be collecting these requirements in a sense to build applications, and part of that application will be the database. So I want you to understand that. These requirements we speak of today are the same type of requirements that you're going to learn about in systems analysis and design in regards to the system development lifecycle. But we take these requirements, no matter what they are, to help build the application and also design the database. That is one of the phases of the system development lifecycle. So there's a lot of ways of collecting requirements, okay? And again, these are the details. These are the little minute things we need to find out from the business on exactly what it is they need and they want and how it all should work. There's a lot of things that have been written on, a lot of books, a lot of methodologies, and so on. I want to keep this very simple for right now. I know it's brand new to you, and I hope I'm not talking over anybody's head at this point in time. But all I really want to do is help you understand that you got to ask somebody what it is they really need. And in some cases, delve down a little bit deeper based upon some of the answers to their questions. That's actually called analysis. Okay? What we're going to do for this particular video and this particular course is I want you to understand why you're collecting requirements. I think that might help. Understand how you're going to collect the requirements. Understand what to avoid when doing so, and there are things to avoid, and understand how to succeed when collecting requirements. The why. Once again, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it's worth repeating. A database that you're creating has to support the needs of who you're doing this for, and it's going to be probably a business. Most of our graduates coming out of our software development majors will be, business application developers initially. Some of you might go on and get a computer science degree and maybe go more the science way, but the majority of you will probably be working for a business. That's what I've done my whole career and loved it. But to do that, you must then understand the underlying business processes of which we're trying to support. That makes the business run, and we need to understand those needs. So we need to understand what it is they're asking us to support to build this application around, and therefore a new database. One thing I'll tell you right up front, it's not really part of the why, but really the thing to avoid, is avoid assuming anything. Don't assume you know anything about the business. Even if you think you know a little bit about it, don't assume that. Our goal here is strictly communication. This is the analysis phase of everything. Communicate with your customers and have them tell you what they need. You can have the conversation, but don't assume anything. And you can ask open-ended questions and maybe very bright questions based upon some of your history and experience. But once again, don't assume anything. Don't put words into people's mouths. How are you going to do this? What are we going to do? So we're going to talk to people, and we're going to talk to the stakeholders, the company staff, the management, and so on of the business to try to figure out what is actually needed and what they actually need. Hopefully what we're going to be able to do is talk to the people who are actually using the system, who's going to provide that input to the database and to the application, who's doing it maybe differently today or more manually today. That's the people we want involved who can tell us really how it works today so we can actually automate it. To do this, you're going to interview, observe, survey, all kinds of ways to actually collect this information. Most of the time, what I've done historically is sat down with these people step by step and say, what do you do? How do you go about doing it? Where does this data come from? What do you do with this data? Who do you move it on to? What's the next step? I mean, what's an example of a process? A process could be anything from a cash register at a Kroger store and checking out. That could be a process of a service order that may be an HVAC or electrician or plumber when they come to your house and they fill out that piece of paper. That's a process. And all the way to billing, that's a process. All right? Once again, I keep screaming out here, don't assume anything. I mean it. Don't assume anything. Listen, be open-ended. And also another key here is if you don't understand the business, don't worry about it. I get a lot of people who are all fearful that I don't understand this. Well, seek to understand. Matter of fact, most clients and customers will be happy that you don't understand and you own up to that. It shows respect for what they do. They don't like it when people walk in who really doesn't know what they do, acting like they know what they do. Make sense? The how again. How will you go? How will you ask about their business processes? For example, how you collect student information today. So there's some of the questions you may ask. How do you collect student information today? What information do you collect? What do you do with the information? Would you do any of this differently than you're doing today? In other words, if let's just say I'm going back to that storefront again, I might go in and say, how do you complete your orders today? Is it a piece of paper? What do you collect? What do you do with that information once you collect it all? Where does it go? Blah, blah, blah. Step by step, all the way through their manual process. I will ask them that last question at the end. I see you've been doing it this way for quite a while. Okay, is this the right way, or do you think there's a better way of doing it? The one thing us software developers don't want to do is automate a process that may be broken. And there actually are guidelines to a more efficient process. If we can automate an efficient process, now we have something. In the end, you're successful if you end up understanding the steps of the process and you understand the inputs and the outputs from each process. Meaning, you got to make sure you ask those questions. What's coming into this process? What are they filling out? What kind of output are they pushing out based upon them doing their work? And so on. You need to understand each piece of that. And once again, you need to understand how they were doing it today versus how they might want to do it in the future. Because basically things they tell you, they might say, well, this would be a better way. Well, let's talk about that. This is now the time to possibly talk about that. Does that make sense? So a requirements document or a complete set of requirements, for the most part, will sit back and go through the details of understanding what the process is, the step-by-steps. I do this, then I give it to this person, then I give it to this person, I give it to this person, whatever it is. Understanding the data that flows. This helps us define then our databases and so on. What to avoid? Again, assuming, don't do it. Just listen and ask open-ended questions. Try to avoid those closed-ended questions like, do you do this? Do you do this? Yes, no. Ask the questions on how do you do this, or can you tell me more? Those types of things, to keep everything open. Be in their corner. You're working for them. Remember that. How to succeed. I find this step the most critical step of all of the software development steps that we do in developing an application. Some people like this step. Some people love this step. Some people hate this step. But it's the most critical step for success in anything that we do. What do we need to do? You need to listen. You need to be great listeners. If you want to be part of this step, sometimes as a software developer you are and you're not, based upon what you're doing. But again, this works for all walks of life. Listen to people. Write down everything or record everything. Don't miss stuff. Learn to take notes and take them well. Because you're going to take those notes and disseminate them. Going and spending somebody's time that they are giving you in a business, which is usually taking them away from their job, you don't want to assume you're going to remember everything they told you. Write things down. If you feel it's rude to actually be writing as they're talking to you, then record things. Let them know you're recording them. So you can kind of go back and re-listen to everything they said to you and then jot down the notes. So, if you do record, read us everything they said. Ask any questions you don't understand. Don't be stupid here. Don't be shy about asking questions. Ask questions. You're not supposed to understand what they do on a day-to-day basis because you don't do it on a day-to-day basis. So understand that. Be empathetic. What does that mean? Showing an ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Getting in their hearts, getting in their heads. Quit worrying about you. You're trying to get out. You're trying to work with them. So try to understand the best they can. If you do that, boy, you'll be great. And of course, don't assume. Don't assume anything and don't push your ideas on people. You can suggest them in some cases. Like, hey, did you ever think about this? Or why didn't you guys do it this way? Those are good questions. You might want to watch for the answers to make sure you're not insulting anybody. But for the most part, hopefully you kind of get the idea. Don't push yourself on them. Don't push your ideas. Don't assume you know best. Listen to what they do, They'll tell you how they do it, and then you can use your talents to to build technologies to support what it is they do, and then everybody wins. Once again, we know this is an introductory class. Being good at collecting requirements takes a lot of practice and experience. There's no doubt about it. You're not going to get it in week 2 of this course. But I want you to get you started on this. I want you to start thinking about this. I think it's a good part to think about because it's a very important piece, even more important than writing a good program. We will practice much more of this step in subsequent courses. Not only in this course, we're going to practice it several times, but in subsequent courses throughout the curriculum, we will practice it. So right now, just keep it simple, keep learning and trying and going from there. All right, what's next? So basically what we're going to do is now that we got our requirements, we move on to the next steps, which is basically understanding the entities and deriving our entities from our requirements, and then finally forming relationships with those. And those 2 pieces will be the next topic of the next video. And then we'll allow you to go try your hand at doing some of these.